Hello and welcome to Unapologetic, the podcast on UK politics, news and stuff from a right of centre viewpoint. And tonight we've got two of our previous podcasters and a new one, so I will introduce them. Say hello, Sam.
Hello, Sam.
Say hello, Susan. The old ones are the best, aren't they?
I can't. Hello.
And our newest podcaster, our podcast virgin, Andy.
Honoured.
There you go. Okay, right, we've got a whole bunch of different things to talk about tonight. We've got a lot of things on our agenda, if you like. The first one, though, is obviously the top of the news today, and that is the story that the High Court have said that Boris has done something illegal. So I'm just going to read the report to you. A panel of 11 justices at the UK's highest court, the Supreme Court in London, gave their decision on Tuesday in a ruling on the legality of the Prime Minister's advice to the Queen to prorogue Parliament until October the 14th. The judges, led by the court's president, Lady Hale, held unanimously that Mr Johnson's advice to the Queen was unlawful because it had the effect of frustrating Parliament. The court also found that the prorogation was also void and of no effect, meaning Parliament has not been suspended. Mr Johnson told the BBC, "Obviously this is a verdict we will respect. We will respect the judicial process. I don't think it's right," he said, "but we will go ahead and of course Parliament will come back. The important thing is we get on and deliver Brexit on October the 31st. So that's what's happened. What do you make of it, Sam?
Well, I don't think we're any further along, really, because now we're back to sort of a bit of a status where nothing's going to be moving, we're not going anywhere. I kind of guess it's over to Boris and his next move. Does he kind of call a vote of no confidence on himself? Does he wait for the opposition to do it? I don't know, really. I don't know where we are. It's just a very sad day.
We could be in a situation where he gets the Conservatives to call a vote of no confidence on him, and all the people who think he's done the wrong thing vote against it. What do you think, Susan?
I like the fact that it's the apparently been found a frustrating Parliament. I think that's quite ironic because the whole country is completely and utterly frustrated with Parliament.
That's right.
Yeah, a little bit of ironic justice coming up there, I think.
And Andy, what's your view on this?
I think, to be honest, I think that it's very, very sad that he's had to shut Parliament down just to get the will of the people through. Shouldn't have had to do it. Parliament should be doing what they're elected to do, which is make sure that democracy goes through. And it's sad that it's got to this point.
Well, you think he should have done it back in March? We should have been out before
I
it
don't
was
think
even
he
Boris.
should. I don't think he should have had to. I think the whole government should have been working towards getting us out of Brexit on the original date, and they haven't done. And they've scrapped and they've fought. We've finally got in a Prime Minister who is willing to stand up for the vote for democracy, and still, the people that we elect, the people that we trust, the people that we need to run our country, are just unwilling to do it, and it's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some people are calling for him to step down because they're saying that he lied to the Queen. I don't suppose he thought it was a lie when he did it, but I mean, do you think there's any chance of him stepping down? What do you think, Susan?
No, I don't think he will. I really don't think he will. He seems quite strong in his conviction of what he's going to do and why he's going to do it. And there's I don't think there's any query about the Conservatives backing him on this either. And actually, I've spoken to quite a few Remainers actually, and they've just sat there and said, it's the unknown that is causing more damage than anything. It's either in or out. You can't keep guessing. You can't keep pretending that it's not happening. So I'll be honest with you. No. I hope he doesn't step down, if I'm honest, because he's the first one that's doing anything.
What are you going to do, Sam, if the day that he gets back to the Parliament reopens, he walks in and says, "Okay, then I resign"? What happens then?
Well, I don't know, really. I feel very depressed about it all.
Andy, what do you think?
Well, personally, I think this whole assumption that he lied to the Queen insinuates that the Queen is a fool. And the Queen, I'm 45 years old, and the royal family that I've known have never presented themselves as anybody's fool.
Yeah.
So how could
he will obviously have
this
taken
be
advice before he did this. So it's not just he wandered up to
and
the
I'm sure
Queen
the
and
Queen
said,
did as well.
Yeah, he
to
wouldn't have just
advice.
wandered up to her and said, "Do you know what I think we'll do today, ma'am?"
Yeah, exactly.
I think what he's more likely to have done is I'm sure he took advice from the Attorney General. In fact, we'll get to that. And so he obviously thought he was acting in good faith. But anything can be challenged. Now, other people are calling these judges judicial activists. What do you think about that, Susan?
I don't think there's any way that they can't be political in any way. I think there's
But
always
they're not
gonna
supposed to be, are they?
No, they're not. But how can you not be biased on this? How could you possibly not be biased? Because you either want to remain or you want to come out.
Yeah.
And whichever way your heart lies, which surely is the way that your opinion is going to lie. Because, like I said, the Attorney General doesn't agree with the ruling. So again, How can you possibly?
I mean, I think the High Court first said yes, it was fine to do it. Then the Scottish courts said no, it wasn't fine to do it, and then it went to the Supreme Court, and they agreed that it wasn't fine to do it. I mean, what do you think, Sam? Are they activists, or is this the law?
Yeah, I mean, it's been to the Lord Chief Justice who said he was acting lawfully. The Divisional Court said he was acting lawfully. Lots of people have said that he is. I mean, these judges are appointed by the Queen on advice of Prime Ministers, so it just would be interesting to see which Prime Minister had appointed them. But I just feel really angry with them, and what I would say to them is, I'm so sick of their empty words, and they've ruined my childhood. And that's how I feel about them.
Okay, Greta. Okay, well, actually, there's been an interesting development because news has come out that Attorney General Geoffrey Cox has attacked the Supreme Court ruling against Boris Johnson shutting down Parliament in the leaked court documents that call it lawful and within the Constitution. And he suggests the only reason they would make this ruling is if it was political. So it's not just kind of extremists or people out on the wacky edges of politics who are suggesting this. The Attorney General's suggesting it. What do you think of that, Andy?
Well, I would say we are sitting around and we're discussing something and we're discussing our feelings on it. But I assure you, none of us know more than he does.
Well, I certainly don't. And none of us are lawyers, of course. But
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think what's important to remember is, because I think a lot of people are saying, oh, you can't just accuse them of being activists. But what I think the best way to look at it is that they are judges making a judgment. So it's always a judgment looking at two sides of an argument. And it's like any kind of criminal case, isn't it? Or any kind of law case. There's always two sides presented and one side wins and one side loses. And it doesn't mean the side that lost was necessarily wrong. Or necessarily right, it is just that, a judgment.
Well, I've heard Remainers saying today that that there's nobody who's above the law, and that's a nice trite phrase, isn't it? But Parliament make the laws, and it's a complicated circle, isn't it? If you can make a law and then get the courts to enforce it, that's not what happened with this one, but it is what's happened with some of the efforts to frustrate Brexit. Then you get into a really complicated situation, don't you?
I think so, yeah.
You do. I always like the way it's leaked court documents. You just wonder if anyone just forwarded that to like half a dozen mates, and however it gets out, guys, just don't pin it back on me. Because how can they possibly be leaked all the time?
It does seem like everything leaks like a sieve, doesn't it?
Yeah. What they want to be leaked.
Well, if you're not furious enough, guys, let me give you another piece of news that's just popped up today. So apparently Brussels have demanded another £14 billion from the UK to pay for the EU's no-deal preparations, demanding payment of the extra £14 billion from the UK to cover the bloc's no-deal Brexit contingency plans. You'd have thought they've been making those before now. Anyway, a Eurocrat has revealed that. I haven't seen it corroborated, but it's out there. What do you think, Andy?
Personally, I've got one answer. No deal.
How can they cut? How is it every time they come up with anything, it costs us billions? There's never anything they want to do. If whatever they want to restructure a new office, billions. They want to type out a new document, billions of pounds.
So if they'd sent you a bill for £14.50, you'd have been alright.
Yeah, I'd have been like totally, absolutely okay with that. You've obviously negotiated well, happy to pay that. $14 billion.
An extra £14 billion on top of the huge sum already. What do you think, Sam?
I wonder the motivations for leaking it, really. The Eurocrats saying it, I think they're saying it to kind of suggest that no deal is costing too much money and as another reason for us not to have it. And I just think that actually it's going to have the counter effect. People are just sick of this now.
Well, do you know, if they'd have been reasonable with David Cameron back in the day, we might not even be here. And if they'd been reasonable with Theresa May, not that I think Theresa May did a fantastic job or anything, but if they'd have been reasonable at any stretch of the way, this could all have been resolved by now. But don't they think they're going to give us a bloody nose, and that's what this is all about?
I don't think they realise that when they keep constantly asking, it keeps getting leaked that they want billions and billions of pounds out of us. That actually that just reinforces what the people want and why they want out. Because everything they do, every word that they say, every action they take seems to cost so much money, and it's never about joining up people. It's never about joining up communities. It's constantly about taking money out.
Yeah, every time something like this happens, don't the Conservatives seem to rise in the polls. Although I must admit, Lib Dems seem to be doing okay out of it as well, because Labour are so wishy-washy. At least they're certain on where they stand, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so what have we got now? We've also got, talking of the Lib Dems and the SNP have demanded a no-confidence vote in Boris. But guess who has refused a no-confidence vote in Boris? Jeremy Corbyn has refused to cave into demands for a no-confidence vote tabled against Boris Johnson, despite the SNP and Lib Dems calling for one. In a bizarre move, the veteran left-winger has refused to table a motion that calls into question the leadership of the embattled Mr Johnson. Why? Why wouldn't he want to do that, do you think, Sam?
Because he doesn't want to lose an election. And I think that they're all saying. I mean, I hadn't heard this SNP and Lib Dem thing. I mean, I've heard that they were calling on him to resign, and I think they keep saying resign, resign, resign. If they want him gone, they've got an easy way. Just call on no confidence. They've got the numbers in Parliament now.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have control in Parliament. They could easily do it. I just think they just don't want an election.
I mean, if a no confidence vote is called, might they all vote that they have confidence in him just to prevent an election? What do you think, Susan?
Well, first of all, I'd like to go back to the fact that they're calling for it. So the public called to come out of the EU and they've ignored that. So why on earth should anybody constantly keep listening to their little demands and their stamping of their feet? I've really struggled with why anybody needs to listen to what they're saying.
Particularly the SNP. What do you think? What do you think, Andy?
Personally, I think it's a case of they don't want to put their money where their mouth is. Their own voters, I think if I've got my numbers right, is a 60-40 split towards Brexit. So Lib Dems are clearly Remainers.
I think that's Labour you're talking
Yeah.
about, isn't it? Yeah.
So Conservative are clearly Leave.
No, I think actually the
But
numbers
there's
were that Labour had a majority in favour of remaining.
Oh,
But,
they- I
but
thought it was-
certainly in their northern heartlands, there's
Yeah.
definitely a strong Leave vote there who
Yeah.
who traditionally vote Labour.
So I think that, so if they're going to be wishy-washy, and that goes to, see, when Theresa May was in, they was confident that they would get all the Conservative voters. Because the Conservatives were not happy with Theresa May, which is why they voted for the Brexit Party in the European election.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to give Conservatives a bloody nose. That was their
That's what we got from when we were campaigning.
yeah, that
That's
was
what
their
people said.
reason. So, but now we've got Boris in, who's determined to deliver Brexit as soon as possible.
Yeah.
All the Conservative voters that voted for the Brexit Party are now quite happy to push their Parliament through. Their Conservative Party, they're willing to push them through. They now believe in them. They believe in Boris. I think we all do. And now Labour, no, they're not going to take them voters now.
Yeah.
And they now know as well that the Lib Dems are very much Remain, and Conservatives are very much Stay. That puts them in a very, very tricky position.
Yeah.
And if they all lose their seats, they have very little say.
So what you're saying, I think, is the Conservatives are the Brexit Party now. Labour, nobody knows where they stand, and the Lib Dems are the Leave Party.
Yeah.
And when I say Conservatives are the Brexit Party, I don't mean they're actually the Brexit Party,
Lib Dems
but
are
the
Remain.
party,
He said
the party
Lib Dems.
supports Brexit.
He
Yeah.
said Lib Dems were
God, it
Lib
gets
Dems.
confusing with all these Remains and
Yeah,
Leaves, doesn't
it
it?
does.
You all know what we mean.
But I don't think Lib Dems fully believe that they can beat the Conservatives, but they know they can become now the second biggest party in this country, and they have a very, very good chance of
I think
that.
they really will, though, in a general election.
Yeah, I
do you
do.
think a lot of these
I think
people
Labour
who
are
say
in
they're going
trouble.
to vote Lib Dem would actually drop back to Labour again?
I think Labour are in trouble. personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's so really hard to say because I mean the polls aren't suggesting that, but I mean, I just think if you are sort of a left wing person that supports Remain, I think I would vote Lib Dem, and if I was sort of more of a right wing person, I would vote for the Conservatives. And I suppose the people living in, especially the northern Labour heartlands, are going to be asked a real question. You know, do they vote for Labour that aren't really making themselves clear? Do they vote for Conservatives, which they don't really like, but they're clear on Leave? I think that's why I think Boris doing a pact with Brexit Party would be interesting, because if he, there's some areas in the north that the Conservatives have got no chance of winning, and if he sort of stood aside and let Brexit stand against Labour there, I think we'd get a Brexit Conservative coalition, maybe.
Yeah, but isn't the traditional argument that that Conservative voters deserve a Conservative to vote for, and if you don't stand someone there, you're basically throwing your hands up and surrendering an area where there are true supporters?
Yeah, that's true in most circumstances, but we are in really new, uncharted territory. This is nothing like anyone's seen in their lifetime, I think, really. We're in a completely massive... This is a constitutional crisis. This is something that in 300 years' time people will be teaching about in history lessons. That is actually the magnitude of it, and I don't think we realise that, but it is, literally. In hundreds of years' time, they will be teaching us.
Let me put you on the spot then. So I think all of us currently talking are all people who voted for Brexit. So let's find out. Do you, yes or no, think that we should do a deal with the Brexit Party in the forthcoming election? Sam?
Well, actually, I didn't vote for Leave. I actually voted Remain, and I regret that, and I would never vote again. Yes, I think we should do a deal. As much as I don't like it, I think Farage is a big cult of personality. I don't like him. It's against everything I believe. I just think in this one instance, in the Labour northern areas, we should stand aside for Brexit candidates.
We might not have that much control over it.
We might, no, but if, that's my view. And that's
what do you
my
think,
thought.
Susan?
I have no idea. I really don't. Until things develop day by day, I just don't know. And at the minute, things are developing day by day. And what I think today may not be the same thing I think in 3 days' time. So I just don't know.
Andy?
I think the Conservatives are back believing in the Conservatives. I think the Conservatives are back believing in Boris. I think Boris has got people back on board. I like him. I personally like him. I would vote for him all day long. And I think we don't need to worry about any other party. If the Brexit party do run in certain areas and take seats off the off Labour or Liberals, I think it's only a good thing, because they don't need to be in a coalition, because they're both going to fight for the same thing, which is Brexit anyway.
Yeah.
So we
no,
don't
that's
need
true.
to.
Actually, I think we do need to believe in Boris, because I think people are.
I think it's important. Everyone does.
Yeah, and ever since I was a teenager, I've always thought he was really, the person to be Prime Minister, and he's someone that you can believe in. Anyone can believe in him. It doesn't matter that he, sounds a bit posh or whatever. Anyone can believe in him, and I think that we've actually got to put some faith in him. And I think, I'm wrong. We have got to put faith in him. Let's not do any deals. Let's just tell people what Boris is about.
Well, so I can't be accused of sitting on the fence. I don't think we should deal with the Brexit Party. They have some similarities to us in some policy areas, but they are not the same party as us, and they don't have the same ideals as us. And I just think that people deserve a Conservative to vote for if they think of themselves as a Conservative. Okay, so moving on. So we're going to leave Brexit behind. We're going to talk about something international now. So you may or may not know this, but the Prime Minister of Canada, who is Justin Trudeau, has had to apologise last week after growing blackface scandal. Now what happened is, first one, then another, then a third photograph of him emerged in the past. I think there was one in 2001, there might have been one in 2009, not quite sure, but quite a few years ago, in blackface. And it's not politically correct to dress in blackface now. I think a lot of people would say it was a racist thing to do. There was obviously some controversy about that, but that's the gist of it. The thing is, Justin Trudeau is one of the most woke kind of left liberal leaders in the world, I would say, and is always making a big deal about what people should and shouldn't do, and how all this intersectionality stuff. So I guess what I'm asking for you is, what do you think about Justin Trudeau being caught with 3 different versions of blackface? Susan?
So, on a personal level, I think everything has to be put into context. So, I mean, at the moment now, you can't dress as Mulan, you can't dress as anything that's not your own culture, and I think that's really quite sad. I think if it's done with a respectful way, then I don't see a problem with it. I mean, Molly dancing, for instance, you can black your face in Molly dancing.
There's even been some controversy, hasn't there, over that?
Yeah, it happens in schools. It happened when my little ones are at school, and it's a big thing in the Fens. It's quite a traditional thing, especially in the local festivals. And I just don't. It depends how it's done, doesn't it? If you're doing it for the right reasons, and it's not trying to belittle anybody else's way of life or anything else, then I really don't see a problem with it.
So just to explain to listeners, Susan was referring to the Fens. The Fens is an area in the east of England where the land is considerably flat, and it's where this podcast is produced, which is why she was referring to it.
Everybody must know the Fens.
Well, you don't know. They could be listening to it. The internet is a big old thing. World Wide Web.
Have a look for the Fens. You'll love it.
What do you think about it, Andy?
See, I see any form of hate, it comes from the heart. And if you've got that hate in you, everything you do is going to be hateful, no matter who you're doing it to. Whether this guy realised what he was doing or not, I don't know. But I think in his position, the thing he should be thinking about is respect. And was it respectful what he did? Maybe. I don't think so. So in that context, definitely done the wrong thing. And he definitely should hold his hands up and say, I did the wrong thing.
Well, to be fair, he has. I mean, you've never seen such an apology as this. I mean, he basically just stood up and threw himself to the wolves, and there are wolves after him, I can assure you. I mean, I'm sort of glad because, he brought it on himself, because he's one of the people who's always calling for others to be shamed if they do, and then things emerge from his past. And they said to him, can you guarantee there are no more pictures like this? And he looked very embarrassed, and he said, no, I can't really. Because he doesn't know. Because he can't remember. He said he can't remember all of these ones. And he said, I've lived a while, and this was a long time ago. And he said, I now realise I'm racist, he said. Or, no, I now realise it was because of my privilege, or some of these kind of talking points. What do you think, Sam? What do you think about all this?
I don't know, I just think right-wingers are way too nice, so everyone I've been speaking to about it has been like, oh yeah, but it doesn't matter, he just was dressing up in a costume and just being really nice about it. I'm 32, I've never in my life thought I'm going to, dress in blackface makeup. Everyone knows That's not what you do. It just doesn't. It's not nice. Why would you do that? And you know, not that I'm saying he should, you know, be particularly vilified necessarily, but I just think if that was a Conservative that had done that, if say imagine Boris had done that, oh my God, people would have lost their minds. He would have been demanded to resign. There'd have been riots in the street. I just think that people get away. The left seem to get away with too much because right wingers are too nice.
But aren't they massive? They're massive hypocrites. We know that. The left are broadly, generally, not all of them, but generally are massive hypocrites. And they're always calling out things and then things turn up like this. But the point is, if we do what they do, if we say something you did 15 years ago in a foolish moment makes you an evil person and that's the end of your career, aren't we just doing what they do?
That's the bit I really hate, because they see it with celebrities nowadays. They tweeted when they were 16 and suddenly it's the worst thing in the world that they've said, and now they're not allowed to present shows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can't really, you can't judge someone on today's standards when 15, 20 years ago is perfectly acceptable. You just can't. You change and you grow, and that's exactly what we should be doing as individuals and communities. We should be growing and we should become more tolerant. But I don't think we should villainise everyone just because they did things back in the day that was acceptable then.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is we are saying that as right wingers, and they wouldn't say that. So you know, if that happened, if Boris did that, they wouldn't be saying, oh yeah, you know, 20 years ago it was acceptable. Because you're right. I don't get me wrong. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. 20 years ago it was acceptable to do that. But they wouldn't be saying that. They wouldn't be saying, "Oh, that's okay. You know, it was all right." And you know, and I guess, you know, two wrongs don't make a right. But it's frustrating and annoying.
It is frustrating, but I will still never ever change my view just because someone else wants to be petty.
I mean, don't we as Conservatives believe that intent matters? Don't we believe that? Don't we believe that if somebody did something, not realising it was harmful, just for fun, you know, I think at one time he was dressed up as Aladdin. And it was it was a fancy dress, and he went as Aladdin, and you know, the Aladdin character's not very dark, but it's darkish, and he tried to simulate that. He didn't mean any harm, did he? I mean, maybe now we look at it and say, God, that's a stupid thing to do. But I don't believe Justin Trudeau, the most woke man on earth, meant any harm when he did that. And when he comes out and he says, I'm really sorry, I can't stand the man. I hope he isn't elected again. I don't like any of his politics, but I'm not going to fall to their level and shout him down for a harmless thing he did. Well, it wasn't harmless, but a harmless thing he thought he did that many years ago.
Yeah, but he said he thinks he sang Deo once. I mean, how racist is this dude? Like, seriously.
No. Yeah, he just got into the
that's what he did. He said he basically
the theme of being racist.
That is what he said. He dressed. They said, "What else did you do?" And he said, "I think I sang Deo."
But I mean, I'm sorry. I just think, don't you know?
But when I was a kid, everyone sang Deo.
Yeah.
I mean, it was on kids' music albums.
Yeah.
And,
it was on the radio every day, or Top of the Pops every Thursday.
And I like the
I
way
wouldn't go that far.
I like the way we're going.
Nearly for a little while there.
But I like the way we're going. That we're more thoughtful.
We're going to take
I
the
don't
high
want to get
road.
it to the point where we're so scared to do anything in case we're then shouted down. And
again, we don't want to live in a world where you cannot do anything. You can't.
People need to make
can't
mistakes.
live in that. I still think what he did was a little bit disrespectful, and I think he should hold his hand up and say,
and he has done.
What I did was disrespectful, but he should not be vilified as a bad person, or as an evil person, or as a racist.
His
hopefully-
politics should get him vilified as a bad person.
Exactly, and hopefully in future, before he starts judging other people, and he should start thinking about that.
Yeah.
So in future, when he starts making these comments about, you know, people shouldn't be horrible because of their gender or their race or whatever, he'll be like, you're the guy that blacked up. Shut up, you don't have an opinion.
Yeah, it's going to make it's going to make his future arguments awfully awkward, isn't it? Really, if he starts coming out with stuff
I think
like
the
that.
polls currently suggest he's not winning next time anyway, so fingers crossed. Anyway, moving on to the last item, and the last item, bit of fun I think here, but it's about the Area 51 raid that was threatened. So just read my text here. After the message, Storm Area 51, they can't stop all of us, went viral earlier in the year, there was some concern when 2 million people accepted the online invite and seemed to suggest they might actually do it. This allowed for months of fun stories appearing about what might happen and how the government might respond. The BBC reported that as many as 50,000 might turn up, and a US Air Force spokesman even hinted that people could be killed if they tried to storm the base. So it was all getting a bit hot. So what do you think? First of all, do any of you know what happened on the day?
No.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to guess then. On the actual day, I think it was last Thursday or something, on the actual day came, what do you think happened, Andy?
I think that a lot of the ringleaders was probably either paid off or had accidents.
Oh, we've gone tinfoil hats, are we?
Yeah, and the rest of them probably turned up with nobody to sort of lead them and push them on. Had a little bit of a laugh and giggle, and then went home.
How many do you think turned up, Andy? Don't look at my notes.
No, I would say, okay, as a guess, I would probably say not as many as they expected. I would say a maximum of probably 1,000.
That's a lot less than they expected. What do you think, Susan? What do you think happened first?
I think the person that probably started it really wanted to backtrack and didn't realise the momentum it would take up. If I was them, it'd been a bit of a joke, and they thought, oh damn, everyone's actually pressing, yeah. I don't know, actually. I don't know.
How many do you think went then? How many do you think went?
I would think loads went.
What's loads?
Am I being really nice? I'd say about 5,000 to 10,000.
Could be. What do you think, Sam? What do you think happened?
I'm
I'm sure you've been glimpsing
No,
at my
I
notes.
haven't. I just reckon it was like 50 people or something got there.
Yeah.
and then this dude with a gun was like, it's just a military base, there's nothing exciting. And they were like, oh, okay, and just went home.
Did anyone here say yes?
Maybe they actually let a few in and to have a look round.
I don't reckon they can. It's going to have all been proper, like,
Hang on, yeah, here we go.
Okay, so most reports suggest there were between 1,500 and 2,000 people who turned up.
That was a good guess.
Quite a lot of them, though, were journalists and vloggers there to record the event. And broadly, what they did was there was a couple of like music concerts where bands played. They all got together. A lot of them dressed up in funny alien costumes, and there were tons of people selling merchandise. So I'll just read one visitor said that people were too busy vlogging to actually storm anything. There were some really funny costumes, though. Loads of journalists turned up. It appears there was a lot of partying, merchandising and taking selfies, but no actual raid was attempted. Some reports suggest that a few, I think 2 is the number that's been bandied around, were arrested for trying to pass one of the gates, but nobody was abducted or vaporised with a futuristic ray gun, and as far as we know, nobody was shot by the military. Of course.
I was going to say, how would you know? Because they'd cover that up.
Well,
Oh, come on, Susan.
Susan's not wrong. This is exactly what they want us to think.
What happened is like 50,000 people turned up, stormed it, all got shot and murdered.
All loaded in the mothership and taken off to Zorg 4.
I mean, technically, if we're led to believe that they are, you know, covering up alien technology and stuff, how would we know what happened?
But why would they be covering up alien technology? Why would
Power,
they care?
Sam, power. And to stop Brexit.
Yeah.
See,
Next you're going to be saying that the Queen's a lizard and stuff. It's just crazy talk.
the funny thing is, when we was joking about it earlier, I said, I think they all got there, got some cheap weed, got stoned and didn't do anything and then just went home. And it seems pretty much that's what they did.
I think that, reading between the lines, I don't think you're far wrong. Anyway, guys, I think that draws us to a close tonight. So all that remains is for everyone to say good night.
No.
Night.
Good night.
And we'll talk to you all real soon on the next Unapologetic podcast.